I don't remember it, but when I was at nursery school, there was a substitute teacher named Mrs. Harris, and I'm told she was the very first person I had a thing for. Apparently, I used to come home crying that I didn't want her to go away. When I moved up to primary school, I truly had my first real crush on a girl a year or so below me. Her name was Lorna, and this is a picture of her that I asked my mum to sketch into my little diary. When Lorna moved away to Scotland, I'd never see her again, and at that time was when I realised what I wanted most in my life. My friends all wanted to grow up to be farmers or firemen, and the playground perception of girls was still in that yuck girls stage. But I knew that all I wanted to do when I grew up was fall truly in love with a girl, to marry her and live happily ever after in a little home with a little family, with a cat and a dog. The love I dreamt of was the kind you couldn't question, the kind where you just know, where your half becomes whole, and from the first gaze until your last day, home is being held in their arms. That was what I wanted most in my life. Not to write, to draw, make films, or sing songs. It's always been about finding that love. I somewhat expected things might start happening when I got to secondary school, because it had been there that my oldest brother and sisters had begun getting their boyfriends and girlfriends. But things didn't quite happen like that for me. Secondary school instead was a place where my mind got turned upside down and twisted apart by bullying, and for nearly 5 years of it. I was easy to toy with because I was so sensitive, so socially unsophisticated, and lacked any understanding of how to protect myself. Sometimes, to feel better, I'd fantasize about defeating my bullies and walking away with the girl who loved me. But oftentimes, I'd just distract myself by getting home from school and putting on one of my videotapes to watch. They were mixtapes of my favourite shows I'd record off the telly that would cheer me up, like The Simpsons or The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Watching those tapes is how and why I progressed into having such a deep passion for films and cinema. It was also a coping mechanism that postponed proper problem solving and developed my lifelong issues with screen addiction and junk food. So, later on, when I was 15 and the bullying had ended, my mind was still in a mess because I'd never learned how to clean it up and why I so terribly needed to. For it fatefully was then which that dream of mine to fall in love would finally come true. In every way I'd ever wished for, but beyond all beauty I'd known, my heart had found its home. However grateful and so wondrously lucky I am that it even happened at all, the timing of it was just unlucky. For the 3.5 years it lasted, I always knew I'd drive the relationship to an end, but I couldn't steer myself away from doing so, regardless of foreboding assessments I'd write in my journals of the time. When it did end, and quite rightly too, I was unsurprisingly broken. It was at that point when I first considered and came the closest I've been to cutting my life short. Evidently, and thankfully, I would instead choose to carry on. A choice I took upon the chance that if I committed to mending the monsters in my mind, alongside serving others the best way I thought I could. Mine to make warm-hearted movies like Wall-E, then maybe I might earn another chance with my dream again. In a year's time, from 18 to 19 years old, I'd already come a long way to befriend the beasts in me. By 22, 23, I'd mended my most major issues, and I think became as well adjusted as anybody else. Nowadays, I'm still my sensitive self, but happily, more recently, have felt very like the boy I was before secondary school. Throughout the years, I've tried continuously to craft stories of my own that are uplifting and inspire goodness. Films like The Full Monty or Planes, Trains and Automobiles have helped me through hard times, so it seems like the best thing I could do would be to make movies to help others too. Though unfortunately, the only stories I think I'm actually in a position to tell are those that are the darker and deeper ones. Every happier-hearted idea I've had has eventually begun to either mirror or fall meek beside the same big stories calling and clawing to come out of me. I surrendered to my failure to fulfill what I originally intended a long while ago. Sometimes I've wondered that if my real life was on the right track, maybe then I'd be able to tell tales of a softer, sweeter kind. I was in my early 20s when I felt ready enough to go looking for love again. I looked very hard, challenging myself extensively and experimented adventurously, but I've not had luck in finding that right someone, or even many people I'm just plain attracted to. There have been people I've fancied, and there's been some I've held soft spots for, but they've been quite few and far between over the years. The closest it came to feeling right was a crush I had for a girl named Daisy. One time, out of desperation, I went against my gut and tried to settle down into a relationship with a nice, bright and well-suited girl. But after 3 months of abject misery, I accepted that the way I'm wound is the way I'm wound. I've often thought about ending my life. I've very carefully considered the complexities of reason and what's right. I've wrote about it, sung about it, and even made a 5-year plan to enact it. What's kept me here have been my stories. I have 3 stories I care deeply about, have long worked on, have yearned to tell properly, and know how it feels to do so. I'm overwhelmingly grateful for them sustaining me as long as they have, for it was last Christmas when, wonderfully, after 20 years, and for a second surprising time, I finally fell in love again. Unreciprocated and unrequited once more, but I am so very thankful for it nonetheless. What here I've written and read to you now has come about because of 2 things. The first being that I wanted to explicitly explain myself before what in months or years may come. The second is to resolve my worry that good people I've spoken candidly to before wouldn't feel any amount of burden. My intention going forward is to smile, be silly-hearted and give all the best I've got. I don't want help or support from anybody, as I'm happy with how I take care of myself. But I do want to say thank you to my inspirational friends and the people I've so luckily known.